What we're going to try and do today is start the process or start the journey for you all that are looking at this for the first time, because it's going to have an impact on your business at some point, or in the school, or in your town. It's a very complicated process. We're not going to have all the answers today for sure. We're going to be able to explain to you what we've started in terms of this process and what we think is starting to work. We'll know better after another year to 2 years. But feel free at any time during the presentation, please, if you have a question, that's the time to ask it, because if you're anything like me, you'll forget it later anyway. So please do that if you would. Let's go to the first one. As I say, this is sponsored by the Bennington County Solid Waste Alliance. Mike alluded to that, if you would. It's made up of, I believe, 11 towns. I don't have the number right, Mike? 13. 13, thank you. Bennington, Dorset, Glastonbury, Arlington, Manchester, Pownell, Rupert, Sandgate, Searsburg, Shaftesbury, Stamford, and Sunderland, and Woodford. Act 148. Vermont actually took a far-reaching and a very progressive step when it enacted 148. A number of the states in New England especially, and around the country, have done piecemeal enactments of disposal bans. No electronics, no paint, no mercury, that type of thing, small pieces. And some are actually right now looking at organics bans as well. Massachusetts is. And the state of New Hampshire, believe it or not, which has no regulations for anything because we all live, freeze, and even die over there, they're actually looking at the impact that this has in some regards because of neighboring towns on the border, especially on the Connecticut River. But just in terms of the reality that everyone has got to look at the waste stream a little differently than it has. It's having a big impact on budgets, certainly, in the recycling business that we'll talk about in the second half, where recycling used to pay for itself or make money, now it's a cost. And it's going to have an impact on the MSW as well. The state of Vermont has one landfill up in Coventry. That's a little far from here. The cost of hauling to there.
MSW is municipal solid waste.
Sorry.
And for those of you who aren't in the business.
In terms of the requirements in the statute, one of the first ones was by December 15th, Mike's group had to submit a solid waste improvement plan which covered a gamut of requirements. The timeline for this started with 14. Transfer stations and drop-off facilities must accept recyclables at no additional charge. Another deadline or a timeline was 15. Then you're looking at the pricing to take effect in terms of the unit-based pricing. 16, this year's the leaf and yard waste now is included, which it wasn't required before. There's a big change next year in 17. And in 17, any municipal solid waste transfer facility must accept organics. That's a difference. Yeah. One of the other differences is, prior to that, if you did not have a composting facility within 20 miles, you were exempt. There's also a list of weights. Sharon, you can help me with this. What's the first one, 104 tons?
I haven't memorized all of them, but I know that 2017 is kind of the last stair step for food scrap generators, and that is if you're generating 666 pounds per week of food scraps or more. Your deadline is before 2020, it would be 2017. And so I think it's something like 900 pounds or something a week for 2016. But yeah, so they're stair-stepping it. So the largest generators, like the hospitals and the large hotels, started having to divert their food scraps in 2014. Right. So yeah, it's stair-stepping down. And in reality, the size of most of the businesses in Vermont, most of the restaurants have not been impacted yet, but they're going to be impacted this year, next year, 2020.
Basically, the actual tonnage rates in the first year in 14, it was 104 tons. So if you generated 104 tons or more, then you had to find a spot for that organic waste. It could not go to the landfill. Then in 15, it dropped to 52 tons. Half. In 16, right now, anyone who generates more than 26 tons, which is a half a ton a week, your wedding of 300 people may generate a little bit of material. So you have to figure out what your total is for the year, see whether you have to do it. But again, if you didn't have a facility within 20 miles, you were okay for that period of time. Next year, when the transfer stations and drop-off facilities must accept the food scraps, that's going to change the logistics. Now you have facilities that are within the 20 miles. So now, if you're over 26, or actually over 18 tons a year next year, then you're going to have to take that organic material to the drop-off or to the transfer or to a facility.
Just the 20 mile, there is are not facilities in Bennington. So those that don't know where there's a compost facility, where Bennington's the 20 mile ring would go from Houghton Lane, Bennington.
Okay.
Right, and so so a transfer station that has a food scrap acceptance site designed for residents, they're not going to be able to accept truckloads, right? I mean, just the transfer stations, because you have a full-blown compost facility where the composting is actually happening. So the transfer stations are going to be bringing in their materials to you.
I would assume that the transfer stations would have a pickup collection by us, so we would go and pick up the totes at the transfer station. But it's a great question.
Yeah.
Does the transfer station qualify as the center point for the 20 mile radius? So, for example,
Mike, gotcha, go ahead.
I don't think so. I think it's, for instance, your compost facility is a compost facility, and therefore anything within 20 miles, if you're within 20 miles, then you have to.
Right. That was my understanding, but I wanted to check in.
After 20 miles goes away.
Right. After
Right.
2020, it doesn't matter. You've got to find a way.
And the facilities, well, I don't know about the big facilities, but the small town facilities, like Shaftesbury, for instance, has started taking food scraps from people who bring their materials themselves, not from a hauler, because they don't accept stuff from haulers. So I think that's the other thing with those facilities is they have to accept it from people. Like if I'm bringing my bottles and my cans and my bag of trash, now I can also bring my bananas and all that stuff.
This is a good example. It's only one part of it, but it's very complicated to make this big a change. This is a huge change in the infrastructure of the state of Vermont. Irregardless, the major point is that by 2020, it doesn't matter. By 2020, the state of Vermont has taken the action. Mike, do you remember, was it a unanimous vote? 148?
I think in
Yes.
the House, I don't remember what the Senate.
In the House,
it
yeah.
was unanimous by the legislature.
Yep.
The only unanimous vote ever.
Well, it's a courageous vote in terms of there was no infrastructure in place to take care of it. As Mike has pointed out, as far as we know, there's not a lot of funding for it. There are a lot of things that are going to need funding, including presentations like this, including visiting the sites and saying, okay, where's your dumpster? How much do you really need? And all that kind of stuff. It's really groundbreaking in terms of what it, if you look at the vision going forward 20 years from now, probably most of the country is going to be looking at the same thing. I know New Hampshire is because one of the major landfills in New Hampshire is filling up. And they're talking about it closing. That's Turnkey in Rochester. That by 2025, that will no longer be available. And that probably takes a third of all the waste in the state of New Hampshire. So it's a reality that is coming to other states as well. I think Vermont, to its credit, has stepped forward. Now, how do we do it? Is where we're at. But by 2020, all food scraps are banned from a landfill. So whether you take it to the transfer station, you take it home and put it in your own private compost facility that you've got back there, you're going to have to find a home for it by 2020. It cannot go in the trash and cannot go in the Coventry landfill. That's the clearest message we could deliver of all of this this morning.
And this made, and you are the moderator, so.
No, don't worry, I'll shut you off. Yeah.
Keep me in check. We are. So it is a very difficult time for haulers because in typical state fashion, what we are finding, and I can report back that we had 2 A&R enforcement people come with lawn chairs and set up at our transfer station for 4 hours the other day to check our loads as we dump, unannounced, unwelcome. And so what's going to happen is it was a 90-degree day, and I hate to say this, I do admit that I said they're not getting any water.
A little closer to the pile.
So what we're up against as a hauler, and it's going to be every hauler, whether you use us or you use Casella or you use a small hauler, they're going to the biggest fish first, and it's going to trickle back to the customer. So when you get letters from your hauler, we are reacting to the state enforcement people that has been an increased enforcement to the haulers, which is really difficult for us because the studies show that there's $45 million of investment needed to satisfy this law. And most of it's coming from the hauling community. So prices are gonna go up, enforcement on us is going up, and it has to be passed on, as is cost is going up. So it's going to start, and as the hauling community, we report, I sit on the infrastructure committee in Montpelier, and we keep saying, you need to enforce the customer. Because what's really difficult for us is that we're put in between the state law and the customer. So
And you
we,
don't know what they're putting in the dumpster.
and we don't wanna,
You can't control that.
yeah, we don't want to be the cops to our own customers. It's putting us all in a
Yeah.
bad spot. So
Yeah.
we're hammering the you need to get outreach, which is great, and then you need to help enforce to the customer side, not on the hauling side. But that's, you're going to hear a lot of people are going to be upset in the hauling community.
And one of the things that Josh Kelly wanted to get through, but there was too much pushback, was a mandate that we were only going to have clear trash bags. But if they're clear trash bags, I mean, and I think that's a great idea, because if I'm, I just don't care, and I'm walking in there, and I know everybody can see my garbage bag is absolutely full of yogurt containers, paper, and a lot of Miller Lite cans, and I'm taking it to the garbage, then it takes a little more chutzpah or something to walk past everybody where it's clear that I'm doing something that isn't okay. But yeah, it's basically, how are they going to regulate it? Well, they're not going to knock on everyone's door. They're trying to make us knock on everyone's door in a way for education and outreach. But the low-hanging fruit for them is to pick on the haulers and then make the haulers enforce, which puts the haulers in a position. And one reason why I think it kind of makes sense for us to do outreach and meet with businesses, I'm not from the state, so if somebody has been frustrated by regulations from the state regarding solid waste or anything else, I can listen to them, and I'm not a member of the state. And so then maybe we can help them solve problems or challenges to what they're being asked to do.
That's a good point, though, in terms of the enforcement piece. One of the messages we want to make sure we leave with you is that whenever we have a conversation with a member, it stays between us and the member. We're there to try and figure out how to help you. And you're going to see in the second part, in Cindy's presentation on transfer station operations, in New Hampshire, what we've developed is a self-inspection checklist. So what we do is the facility operators will go through that checklist on their own, without A&R, without DES there. And we've been able to get from our DES, okay, what are you looking for when you come to a site? You want to see signage, you want to see a gate, you want to see barriers around the compactor. Tell us what you're looking for when you come to do an inspection. Write it down. We gave it to our members. They go through and they do it ahead of time. So when the inspector shows up, they can sit in the sun all they want because we've already done it. And we can hand them the self-inspection. Last week, we knew you were coming this week, so last week we went around, we found we didn't have the eye wash station in the right place, so we moved it, put it in the right place. Here's your list. Here's when we checked it. Go ahead, check it. And it makes it easy. There's a huge difference, and we joke about this between New Hampshire and Vermont on a lot of issues. One of the things that I've been very pleased with the New Hampshire DES people is their concern is getting you to compliance, not finding you because you're not in compliance. And it's an educational piece over there that we're hoping that will, as time progresses here and we do more of these and we talk to A&R a little bit, they get the idea that it doesn't help anybody to fine somebody $8,000. What helps them is to make sure that if there is a problem, they correct it properly and that you get to where you want to be. Take that $8,000 instead of finding some business or community or whatever and put it into developing better signage or labeling or whatever you need to do, or have people go out not as inspectors but as education and outreach. This isn't all about gotcha. So the next group of slides are from A&R, and this is what kind of was the genesis of the 148 enactment. They looked at the composition of the waste stream. This is what was being delivered to Coventry in terms of percentages. This was done by DSM out of Ascutney, Vermont in 2013. About 22% of the waste tonnage was paper. We think it's by weight, not by volume. Plastic was 11%, metals were 4%, glass 2%, food scrap and organics 28%, and other ends up being about 33%. This is supposedly trash, okay? The problem is that this should actually be flipped. 65%, this should all be recycled or kept out of the waste stream. Currently, the number for the state of Vermont is about 33 to 35% is being recycled out of the waste stream. It should be just the opposite, and that's the goal of 148, is to get everything out of the landfill. So,
Where does construction fall under?
C and D, they don't count in that. This is residential
So it's
waste.
part of that.
Yeah, it's separate. In New Hampshire, some of the C and D is able to be recycled because there's a processing facility over in Urco's, over near Lee, where they make it into chipboard and use it for new cabinets. So that's a 95% recovery rate type of thing. Part of the genesis also was the food hierarchy that was adopted. Try and reduce the source of pollution. That looks at packaging. You know, if you don't have to wrap it 3 times, you only have to throw away 1, that's better. If the food can be reused, and I think one of the things in the recent article by Josh Kelly, they're seeing about a 30% increase at food pantries now, where supermarkets are looking at it, okay, we know we can't throw this away, we know we've got to comply, is it okay to give it to the food pantry? They're taking a better look at it, and Ray, you'd know from your experience working with them. That's a huge plus. I know the Boston Bruins actually got an environmental stewardship award about 3 years ago because at every one of their home games, they packed up all the processed food and went immediately over to a food pantry or a shelter. So they were able to not throw it away like they used to be. So there are good examples like that. If it can't be used by people, go for animals. If not, composting, and then finally energy recovery, which I think is going to be more of incinerator, which is not applicable here in Vermont. A&R resources, this is in your handout, and I'm not going to read through it, but it basically gives you the overview. Why was the law needed? What are the benefits of the law? What does the law do? You can see it in your packet there, and you can also see it online. The entire presentation will be posted on the website, so if there's one slide that you want to use for your employees, and certainly when we come to visit, these are the handouts that we would use for the Leave With You. This is the second page, I believe. Yep. Highest and best use of food scraps. We just talked about the hierarchy. And it gives you all the contact information. If you have questions directly for A&R, you want to call them directly, by all means. If you want to call us or call the Alliance, you can do that as well. The statewide 6, these are the recyclables that they've identified. They want you to, all paper, magazines, newspapers, that type of thing, but not paper towels, soft tissues, or hardcover books.
Paper towels, especially if they're not the kind with plastic in them. So paper towels that don't stretch, they just tear. And tissues are really great for compost, not for feeding to the animals at the farm if you're sending your food scraps to a farm, but if you have a compost bin in your backyard, paper products like that are actually really good for your compost. They add carbon.
Each one of these categories has an exception for cardboard, dry and clean cardboard, cereal and cracker boxes, but not juice cartons, frozen food containers, or greasy pizza boxes. And not cardboard that's got that wax wrap on it that you'd see typically with vegetables in the supermarket. Steel, not major appliances. Glass, not window glass, light bulbs, or ceramic glass, and certainly not CRT glass. Hard plastics, but not plastic bags. Every one of these has an exception. And if you think that Vermont's struggling with it, I can tell you that nationwide, there's not one state that has the same definition. So you can imagine that the general population, as a country, we have no clue which is okay, which is not okay. You can go from California to Nevada, over to Colorado, you get 3 different rules and regulations. It's very complicated. So each state has to come up with the best they can in terms of their own definition. You'll see it in the mixed recycling. I think that's this one here, paper and cardboard. This is if you're doing a single stream facility delivery or if it's a zero sort type of thing. This is what they will take. Clean and empty containers only, please. But every one of these is developing more and more exceptions. Glass jars and bottles now over in Massachusetts as well as New Hampshire. If you're going to a single stream facility and you're bringing in glass as part of it, because that's a container, it's going to cost you $5 to $10 more per ton. Because that glass gets mixed in with the fiber, and it makes the fiber less valuable when you go to sell it. The mills that reprocess the fiber don't want to see this, and it ruins their processing completely. Next one. Food scraps, remove stickers from produce. Take the Chiquita banana peel sticker off before you bring it in. I know, it's crazy. Again, in New Hampshire, they're dealing with composting, but they won't allow you to do meat and dairy right now. No one's going to take the hamburger buns off of the hamburger. It's a problem in each different state. Coffee grounds do work. This is what they're looking for in terms of organics. This is what is allowable into the landfill. And this comment from A&R, when in doubt, throw it out, is okay, except that really that's not what we're trying to get to. We're trying to remove the doubt. Let's figure out what we're supposed to be doing and call it that and not do anything else. If you think about it, the paper cups, stirrers, straws, plastic utensils, this drives me nuts. We're better off, just don't make this stuff in the first place. And I had a student in one of Cindy's classes said, why don't they just ban it? Don't let them make it. Don't let the producers, the manufacturers make this stuff unless there is a place where you can use it again. So you're not ending up having to throw it away.
A lot
Sorry?
of compostable.
Yep.
The problem with the compostable cups and forks and whatnot is that if you're taking them to a commercial facility, they don't have the time to pick it up, rub it off, look at it. Oh, is this one compostable?
Wouldn't you just put that in the trash?
Well, you put it in the trash, but it's a lot of them are recyclable, so they can be recyclable. But we're not most compost facilities don't want those because they can't manage like, oh, is this fork compostable
Right.
or is this plastic
I guess
contamination?
I thought put it in the trash because it breaks down and it's better than putting.
And that's actually a problem. One reason why, well, a couple of reasons why this law went into effect is we have one landfill left, and it is filling up quickly. And we're trying to slow that process because what are we going to do when that's full? And also because when you put something into a landfill that is organic, meaning something that used to be alive, whether we're talking about paper and cardboard or food scraps or a bag of leaves or a compostable cup, then as it breaks down, after it's been buried under however many feet or tons of other stuff, there's no air in there. It never gets stirred or mixed like it would in a compost facility. And it generates a greenhouse gas that is really, really powerful called methane. And so about 3% methane is over its 100-year lifespan as a molecule is 20 times more powerful a greenhouse gas than CO2. And so one of the easiest ways to kind of remove that aspect of global climate change input is to just remove that one piece, it's just, so that's one reason why we don't want those in
Good
the
intention.
trash.
Right.
Right.
Not necessarily good result.
Right, and one of the things that I ask people to look at when they're like, well, it's compostable instead of just plastic, it's like, well, the chemicals they had to use to turn that corn into a cup are chemicals you don't really want any more than you want plastic. It's like, there's a way to get corn into the see-through cup that will hold your warm liquid. It's not.
Feel good about it.
And you can feel good about it. And people want to do the right thing, and yay, but if you look at the science and the engineering of it, it's not so great. It's not so great. Yes?
As a composter, we don't want to see the compostable ware. It's not truly compostable. What it actually does is it breaks down. So it's little tiny pieces of that product. It doesn't, the composting process is actually stripping of molecules and turning into new molecule chains. That compostable ware does not do that. It disintegrates, but if you looked at it under a microscope, it's still little pieces of that. So we're not allowed to sell our compost as certified for organic use because of the plastic ware and the compostable. As a fellow business owner, I would tell you, save your money on the compostable ware, spend it on something else.
Yeah.
Because it just, and you're absolutely right. You can take newspapers 60 years old in the landfill, you can still read them.
Yeah.
And so I'm talking about the compostable materials that look like plastic, but the clam shells that kind of look like a paper conglomerate, those things are fine. The
Yeah.
paper-based ones are great. The cups that they say are recyclable or compostable sometimes that look like paper, but on the inside the coffee cup has like a thin plastic film, those are neither recyclable nor compostable because that plastic film.
There's also a difference in terms of what is recyclable. Just because it's got the circle of arrows doesn't mean anybody wants to buy it. So you can collect it all day long. Those clamshells, the 3 through 7s, maybe 2 years ago, you could get 4 cents a pound for it if you sold it on the commodities market. Now, no one will take it. Don't bother shipping. We're not taking any more orders as the price of oil has gone down. And we're going to talk about this in the second session a little bit. But just, I think it points out how complicated this is. If you think about the average person out there just trying to go through the day and take care of the stuff they've got to take care of, they don't have time to figure out, is this a 3? Is this really work? Should I be doing this with compost?
You think you're doing the right thing and you're not.
But I give them credit because they're still trying to do the right thing. I've seen more people go into the transfer station at my town when they say, okay, I don't know what to do with this, but I don't want to throw it in the trash if I shouldn't. And they'll stop and ask the attendant, which really gets into the whole PR thing and how professional the attendants need to be at the facilities, because they get asked questions all day long. So it's a very complicated issue. And again, credit to Vermont to try and do a universal law. It would have been great if they'd done the $45 million that would have helped get it to where it needs to go. And maybe they'll get to that point. Probably not looking too good with the budget, but I'm on the other side of the river, so I'm okay right now. Next slide. So back to the solid waste implementation plan. They formed the alliance. They had an RFQ for the SWIP. They hired us to provide outreach and training and offer technical assistance based on survey results. We have another survey is going to go out within the next month. The first one we awarded conference awards to the businesses that responded. So we're trying to provide some carrots for people that want to do this and want to do better. Part of the SWIP and part of what A&R is trying to get to, I think, is as many businesses as they can. So one of our charges was to get to at least 20 food generators and 20 non-food generators from a list of 100 priority businesses that the Alliance provided us. We're going to provide webinar training. The fact that this is being filmed today and it'll be available there. It's also going to be available on our website and on the Alliance website for those that couldn't get to it. And major event organizers, people that have weddings, Hilding that has receptions and weddings, any of the hotels in the area that do that type of thing, we're reaching out to them in the next 6 weeks especially to get them on board and get the information to them that they need. And technical assistance on request. As part of our first go-through with schools, we had a daycare, I think, that was requesting us to come back and visit because they want to get themselves into a program and teach their kids early on how to do this. I'm not sure the daycare ages, but we've had people I know as young as 3rd and 4th graders that do annual trips to the transfer stations in Ludlow, Vermont, for example, and they want to start them early. Again, just from my own experience, I've seen more grandparents take their grandchildren and say, okay, this goes here, this goes over here, and this is why we're doing that. And it takes a little bit of a while, but that education process takes place every time. And I will tell you that that's really the high point of the work that we try and do. There's a 7th grade class down in Paquines Parish down in Louisiana. And in that parish, the company came to the parish council and said, I'm sorry, we're going to have to double your recycling costs because our costs are going up. The parish council said, okay, we can't afford recycling. And they canceled the program. Curbside recycling program, just gone. Did away with it. The 7th grade class went to the next parish council meeting. They brought all their parents with them, and the parish council changed their mind and went back. So if you can instill it early on, how important it is to do this, we need to leave a better earth than what we found if we can, or at least not leave it damaged. And that's the real work that we're trying to do. Again, we started in 1981. This is just to give you a background, and it's all municipal voting members in our organization. We try and help them with the entire waste stream, whether it's electronics, whether it's paint care coming in, which we're trying to advocate for in New Hampshire right now. It could be with selling cardboard for people that collect cardboard, or it could be for getting a better price or contract on their single stream or on their MSW, their trash. We help towns negotiate contracts for those with haulers. We try and keep a level playing field. We don't give one hauler preference over the other. And same with the processing facilities that we send material to. We do this type of workshop, I say, every month at our office. This is in New Hampshire. It's part of the certification training, which you'll see in the second piece, where they're required to get 2.5 hours every year of continuing ed in order to be able to work at a transfer facility. That's not the case in the requirement in Vermont. It is in New Hampshire. It's a little bit different. They certify facilities in Vermont, but they don't certify operators. Looking for the disposal ban piece. The school club, we've got a piece over here. You go to the next one if you would, Lisa. We're really proud of the work we do here, and part of the here, and I know we're going to get into the business piece of this, and Sharon will talk about that, is we do a Star of Sustainability, which is really an assessment of the school and how they're doing with their materials, how they're doing with motivation, with education, with evaluation in terms of their programming, and that generates how much the star gets filled in. But one of the big pieces here is the star assessment. We actually go dumpster diving. What's out behind the school? What's the size? How often does it get emptied? What does it cost? Is it full when it gets emptied? Does it have recyclables in it when it should just have trash? One of the school districts we did over in New Hampshire, we went and checked all the dumpsters out behind the schools, and we couldn't find one. Well, apparently it hadn't been there for 3 years. It just got taken away. Course of business, maybe a driver made an error, who knows? It wasn't intentional. But they've been paying the bill for 3 years. So the check got cut for $4,300 back to the school district. That was the first step. We found out, okay, everything's in place now. Then we went through and we looked and we said, okay, every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday there's a 10-yarder being emptied on a regular schedule at the school, high school. Why can't it be a 6? Because it's only half full. The savings over a 3-year period for that school district ended up being about $32,000. Because the sizing and the frequency was reduced, and because they increased their recycling. At one of the schools in that district, what we found was that there were 3 dumpsters out back, 1 for recycling and 2 for trash. The recycling one was full of cardboard, the trash one was full of cardboard, and the other trash one had trash in it, because they didn't have any more room for the cardboard. So if you're a custodian, and you take your cart out back, and it's winter, you're not looking around for another dumpster, you put it in the trash dumpster you've got. But it's that kind of look that has to do it, and that's what we're doing actually when we come to your business. We're going to do the same type of thing. We're going to see how that works. 25 Alliance schools were contacted as part of the work that we're doing and surveyed in assistance from the supervisory union. 2 schools have already had the workshops that Sharon provided, and the 3rd one is scheduled for this fall along with 2 more. The goal is to have 13 schools within 5 years, and we've created a quarterly school newsletter that goes to all the schools in the districts, posted on the Alliance website, and it's on our website as well as a separate link.
So there are 4 different workshops with check marks by them. The Healthy Home, Clean Waters, Waste equals Global Climate Change, which goes a lot into how when materials that are compostable could have been, should be not landfilled. Back to the Earth, which is about composting and how it works and why it's a larger focus. And then Garbage Gorillas, which involves taking kind of a random sample of yesterday's garbage and going through it. These 4 workshops, each school has the option of choosing any 3 of those 4 workshops, or maybe they want the same workshop given to several different classes. And so that's what we're offering the schools that, partly, which is funded through the Waste Alliance. But the Healthy Home, Clean Waters is about the fact that we're using a lot of chemicals to clean our homes, and a lot of these products are unnecessarily toxic, and how to recognize that, how to make, how to be safe, and in a very positive way we deliver this information about, because we're working with kids, and the kids aren't necessarily making the decisions, but we teach them about household hazardous waste collection day, and that you never ever mix chemicals, and that when there's a strong chemical odor, it's not as safe for you. How to read a label, how to look for the federally mandated signal words on the label, and it's all of these are very much tweaked for the age range that we're working with. So what 3rd graders are going to get is very different from what a 10th or a 12th grader is going to have. But they're really fun workshops, and I'm always really delighted with the way that they pan out. Afterwards, even the adults in the room are really glad that they were there for it.
Just to recap a little bit in terms of how we got to where we are today and how it affects you, the Alliance gave us a list of about 500 businesses, non-food generators, and 395 food generators. Now, not all of them had email contacts, but we were able to get a good majority of them out of both categories. So we sent out surveys to them. The outreach currently has been provided to at least 20 food and 20 non-food that were physically talked with. The door was open, we had the conversation, they had the materials given to them. In addition to that, under that part of it, there's probably about another 45 that we contacted but weren't able to get a response or haven't gotten a response yet. So we think we've done about 80 in the first round. There was an additional round of 40 businesses, and again, about 75 of those were contacted, but 40 were actually contacted in person, 20 non-food and 20 food. And the goal is to continue to provide technical assistance and provide outreach for the next 6 months and then into the next calendar year. When we go to a business and they don't know who we are, they haven't come to a meeting like this, they haven't heard about what we're doing, they haven't looked at the website, we'll hand them the press release that lets them know that yes, we're okay, we're legit, and we're not there to hurt them, we're there to try and help. And we're going to leave them with a list of materials that are in your packet that we've been talking about, the timeline. We're going to leave them with the copy of the fact sheet, the summary sheet, if you will, both front and back. This one is important because it's a visual. It's easier to understand. You don't have to go through 2 or 3 pages of written text to figure out what's going on. This is what is the Vermont state law currently. This is provided by A&R. And it has some timelines in it. It has July 1 of 16 and 2020. So it's an easy visual that you can easily use for training of your employees, certainly, or have posted near where your receptacles are or on the way out, that type of thing. Reminder to staff so that you will be in compliance by 2020. Again, that's the goal, is to get as much education in place as possible. This is the assessment form. You remember I talked about the STAR assessment for the schools. This is the one we use for businesses. And I'm going to ask Sharon to go through this one to try and give you a feel for what a typical visit would be.
So this is a process. It's just 2 pages, one page front and back. And I have done this in as little as 10 minutes in a business where things were hopping, or 45 minutes to an hour where they really wanted to go through a large facility and go through details, and they had a lot of questions. And so Lisa has also been doing this outreach, but we modify it to what you have time for, and basically we introduce ourselves and say hello, want to talk to a manager and owner, somebody who's actually a decision maker, somebody who has agency in the business, because I designed this, and initially I did it in the town of Woodstock, Vermont. And if I didn't talk to, because I did follow-up almost a year later with each of the businesses, the 47 businesses I worked with, and if I hadn't actually talked to an owner or a manager, even if the owner or manager told me to talk to this other person instead, they never necessarily saw the report that I generated. And the report is like, these are the things you're doing well, and here are some recommendations, and here is some actual support so that you can do these things. But basically, when we go in, we want to know, well, how many employees do you typically have on site? Because that impacts what management skills or logistics you want to have set up to best deal with them. If it's just you, or you have 2 employees, well, you don't need an official policy. It's just 3 of you. If you're managing 20 employees, especially if a lot of them are seasonal, young people, like the rec center in Woodstock, where you've got a whole bunch of seasonal employees who don't necessarily know, then you need to have like good training and be on it, because you're managing teenagers they're busy, they're lifeguards, they're high on sugar. And then we look at, well, do you own the building? Or are you not able to make some of the decisions that the landlord has the power to do? And do you share those dumpsters? Because I'm going to collect information like we do at the schools. Like, how big is your dumpster for trash and recycling? And if you're a food scrap generator and you're diverting your food scraps, your toters or dumpster for food scraps, how often are they emptied? How full are they when they get emptied? And on occasion, at businesses or at schools, there have been situations where they're over dumpstered. Their dumpster is being picked up too frequently, or it's too large. And then the other thing peeking in is, or asking them, Are you suffering a lot of dumpster poaching? I call it poaching when people who are not authorized are putting their trash into your dumpster, which is a crime. And one school I went to in northern Vermont, a quarter to a third of what was in there, it was not theirs. So they were paying the bill, and it was kind of out of the way. These were not tourists. These were locals who knew when the school was closed, and they were putting their tires in the school dumpster. Yeah, and garbage. So we're going to find those things out, and we may be able to be helpful. Actually, sometimes we have saved money for a school or a business because it's like, well, you could downsize your dumpster or change your hauling schedule, and you have the right to negotiate that. Or you need to lock your dumpster during tourist season because these are bags from tourists who you're just on this strip and you're in a high dumpster poaching area. And so then we also want to know what the challenges are. You know, sometimes the footprint of the store makes it really hard, or the high turnover rate of employees. You know, what are your challenges with your trash, with your recycling, with your food scraps? And then there are different categories that impact these things, and put it on the radar. Let your employees know. Hey, do you ask them to pay attention to what's going into the garbage can or the recycling? Do you yourself look? Have you ever decided to audit one day's worth of trash? Some businesses that makes sense. Other businesses that wouldn't necessarily make sense. Unlike schools, where I originally came from doing this work, schools all kind of have the same things going on, the same footprint, the same setup, though not all of them actually have cafeterias. Businesses are incredibly diverse, and so they have different needs, they have different challenges, and we want to kind of see what's going on and see if we can help them troubleshoot. And then we want to know about your collections. Well, in there are your trash and recycling and food scrap containers the right size? Is it obvious what they are, or are people not really sure because they kind of all look the same? Are they labeled for what belongs? And Cindy's going to pass out a label to each of you. These were donated to me because most people don't have any labels on their recycle bins, and these were donated by Casella. I don't represent any one hauler over another. Sometimes I will provide a list of all the haulers that service an area, and I tell people you can cut the banner off that says Casella, but now you know what belongs. And I have had people like, oh, I can't put my plastic bags in there because they just didn't know. And so the labels have been very popular, and I encourage people to put signage above or on their recycling bins that clarify it. And if, these labels are small, you might have to pick it up and look at it. My eyes need me to hold things a little closer. 5 years ago, I would have been able to look at a recycle bin and read it from, 10 yards away. So I encourage you to have labels that are visual so people can see, oh, bottles, cans, jars, paper, cardboard, those are kind of the larger ones. And so are they accessible? Are they appropriately sized? Do you use clear garbage bags? And depending on what facility, that may or may not make a big difference. And then policy and education. Do you have a recycling policy at your business? Now, if you're a tiny business, like I said, you're a 1 or 2 or 3 person show, that's not necessary. You're larger, yeah. When you hire someone new and they get their new employee packet and it's in there, that's great. And in fact, studies have shown people who sign a little contract saying, I will do this, makes it much more likely that they will. Have them sign something. That they will follow that depending on what business you have. Do you talk about it? So do you train them on hire? Yeah, I expect you to recycle. This is how it goes. And like a grocery store that, let's say, is diverting their food scraps, some of them are being sent to the food bank or something like that, or a food shelf. So that training is important, or it might not be if it's a 1 or 2 person show and you just kind of go through it once and it's basic recyclables. And so Also posting something visual, like the band list in the employee snack room or over, on the wall above where they would be doing this in the back room. Those things are all really helpful. And next, please. So we go through that checklist. Are you doing this? Are you doing that? And then I ask folks to go through this list, and in the little left columns of boxes, to put a T by anything that's going to the landfill, and an R for anything that's being recycled or diverted from the landfill otherwise. So, for instance, if you're sending your food scraps to the local farm, then that would be an R, even though it's being fed to chickens, that is a way of recycling. Or if you're taking your mercury bulbs to the local hardware store, put an R by that. And so we get them to fill this out. Now, what I don't say ahead of time is everything on this list is pretty much banned from Vermont landfills. But I don't want people to try to tell me what I want to hear, what they think I want to hear, because then afterwards I can look and I go, so you're just throwing your fluorescent bulbs in the garbage. And when I provide the report afterwards, because I go home and I do a written report and email it to them, hey, these are the materials that you're throwing away that should be dealt with otherwise. And by the way, right here in your town, this place takes your mercury bulbs for free. And they're 3 blocks away from you. So providing those resources, because they don't have time, they're running a business, to look up, they've told me I'm not allowed to put that in the trash, but I have no idea what to do with it. So we want to make sure that they have information in order to meet the challenges of doing things that the state wants them to do. Do you guys have any questions about this? Yes.
I just have a comment, and I'm not sure if it's on this form, but also maybe it'd be helpful is purchasing. The purchasing agent at the business or school to speak with them about the products that they're ordering, how they're packaged.
So you're talking about looking upstream.
Looking upstream at the
upstream.
same time.
Yeah.
And, using that post-recyclable paper, those types of things as it comes in, and then recycle it again.
And in the workshops that I do in schools, especially Waste Equals Global Climate Change and Healthy Homes, Clean Waters, that's a big part of it, looking upstream. That is interesting, and that might be a good kind of amendment that could be added for those who have the time or the kind of business where that would have a large impact. But yeah, for instance, the paper and clamshells, they're great. The ones that compost, not so great. The ones that are plastic looking and say they compost, not so great. Yeah, that's a good point, to look upstream and make recommendations. And businesses, we get it. We're kind of, what I tell people is, I say, I'm kind of living between where policy and rubber meets the road. And so I want feedback. I want to know what your challenges are, because I talk to the state. I do this in 3 different parts of the state. And so, I'm not gonna throw any waste district under the bus. I can just talk to them as a free agent who has nothing to lose, because it's not hurting my budget. I'm not a waste district. I'm a person out there who's meeting with people and business owners. So my feedback counts for something as a free agent. And also, if with C&D, somebody asked earlier, if you're within 20 miles of a C&D recycling facility and you're generating more than 40 cubic yards with a project, you are supposed to be recycling that, dealing with it that way, not landfilling it. And no more questions? All right.
Just to follow up too, one of the important points of this assessment form, like the school assessment form, there's no wrong answers. We're trying to figure out what's going on currently, and then how can we take the next step. Rich's point is really good in terms of the packaging, and I think we saw that a little bit with the corporate experience, where we go to a local facility that's being run and managed, but all the decisions are being made up at corporate. So really where we have to get to is to corporate. So now part of our experience so far has been, okay, now we're going to go back to the Alliance, we're going to go back to A&R and say, hey, this is outside, the corporate office may be in Albany, New York, or it could be in California somewhere. A&R, you've got to let them know that this is the ground rules here for Vermont.
Yeah.
That's not something that the Alliance can do. not something that we can do. The compliance part of it, the real compliance piece, has to go back to A&R in terms of that part of it, and that's part of the communication process that we're doing. In terms of the weights on this, it's very important that we get, as best we can, accurate weights, because that's what the whole measurement process is going to be about. You know, I had 100 tons of trash this year, and I only have 50 tons next year. Great, I'm doing wonderful. If it goes the other way, then we've got to sit back and say, okay, we've got to readjust and figure out where we're going. So trying to get to the weights is hard, because everybody's different. They've got a 64-gallon toter, a 96-gallon toter, they've got a 2-yard dumpster. How much is in there? What's in there? How full is it? What's the composition of the material? And there's all kinds of different calculations you can make if you're not actually taking weight. One way to do it for small businesses, of course, is to just do a simple waste audit. Get a plastic, put everything in a plastic bag and stand on the scale. Figure out what it weighs. Take a typical day. And that may give you a little bit of better sense. The next one I think had to do with the food scraps. Lisa, is that right?
Oh, yeah.
And farms information. This is where we're developing the list of farms that will take materials. Hopefully they'll be willing to volunteer, and hopefully it'll be a betterment. If they can get more material, then they'll be more willing to participate. As Sharon said, we don't limit ourselves to just one hauler. If we miss you at a visit, if we come knocking on your door, we have an appointment or something, and something happens, you have an emergency, you can't make it, you can't get a hold of us, we'll leave a note saying that we were there. Please contact us and we'll reschedule. So you at least know who was on your property. We're not just banging on the door and looking around. As we talked about before, there's a list of haulers that we have generated for the district. It's in alphabetical order. So it's in no particular order other than alphabetical. But these are all folks, as Trevor mentioned earlier, that are now trying to figure out within their own business model, how do we deal with A&R's requirements? How do we deal with 148? How do we try and work with our customers so we're not just passing it off to them, which is the easy out? For those of you that want to dig more into it, because you can spend a lot of time talking trash and trying to figure out what 148 is, we've got the links posted and they'll be on the website, both at the Alliance website, on ours, and this is a direct link into the A&R one. A little bit of a recap. The first in the nation to pass such a comprehensive legislation. A lot of the manufacturers, you talk about upstream, they're looking at, okay, what's going to happen in Vermont? Just as they did with e-waste, because they don't want to deal with 50 different regulations. If you think about a manufacturer like Coca-Cola in the back here, you go, God, if I've got to figure out what I can ship to Idaho and what I can ship to North Dakota and what I can ship to South Carolina, that's a nightmare. That adds a layer of cost that's huge onto what they're trying to do. The paint care program that was rolled out in Vermont, I think last year they started, they've completed their first year. That was based on the same concern by the coatings manufacturing group.
Does that want to get passed in?
They've got them in their packet. Yep. What happened here was the manufacturers, the Coatings Association, which are all the manufacturers of paint in the country, got together about 10 years ago. They were brought together by the Product Stewardship Institute with the idea, we'd like to get, we see that legislation's coming, can we get one that'll work? That negotiation fell apart. They came back about 5 years later, and they decided to form their own organization, Paint Care, which is now doing exactly that. And it's the same program in every state, and they're the ones that are managing it. They're the ones that are doing it, so that's what makes a difference for them. A little different presentation, July 1 of 16, your clean wood recycling for some of your C&Ds there. July 1 next year, your trash facilities must collect food waste. That's a big change. Your HHW goes to 3 collections, it goes to 4 and 18, and then in 2020, all organics are banned from the landfill. So that's really the goal line back in the back end. Yes, sir.
There'd be a slight difference from that. That's the state requirement. For the Alliance, we're going to continue to have 2 household hazardous waste events because we have an agreement with the Rutland Solid Waste District that our residents can bring stuff to there.
So
But they
that
would have
counts?
to pay for it.
That makes sense. That's a really good creative problem solving.
Well, we are looking into a permanent facility, but that's going to take a while to figure out.
Again, that's a good example of, okay, here's the statute, how do we deal with it, how do we actually implement it? and how do we do it so it's cost effective, hopefully.
We'd like to work out one with Wyndham, but they don't have a facility.
This we have up is covers venues and events. We talked about a wedding. You can talk about golf tournaments. I'm picking on the fellow right here who's got those coming up. How do we deal with those, and how do we figure out what's going on? We talked about events and contracts, if you will. If you have an event form where, let's say, someone's coming in for a wedding, whether they're coming into this facility or someone else, there are certain things that you want in your contract to be included. In San Francisco, it's gotten to the point that if you're having a yard sale, you've got to have a clause in there. Okay, what are you going to do with your trash and recycling from your yard sale? Because they've gone that far. But from a practical standpoint, if you're having a farmer's market, who's responsible for the trash at the end of the day, or is it all just get left in the quad? There's got to be some way to figure out what to do with that material. In terms of calculators, this will tell you that if you have so many seats, you've got 0.6 pounds per seat per day, if that's for an event that someone's in the seat. If it's a restaurant, that may not be full. You may not have 100% occupancy. So a lot of these calculators are based on 100%. You have to go back and factor those out. Meals served, it's going to be a pound per meal per day, which we're looking into verifying that. Visitors is 0.45 pounds per day of municipal solid waste you can expect for each visitor coming to your facility for an event. If you think of schools that have events, that have basketball games, that's a higher volume right there for that particular event. But every one of these, if there's a venue that has rock concerts, for example, think of Woodstock. Think of the trash that was left after Woodstock. Nobody thought to pick it up then. But nowadays, that's not the way. It's almost like carry in, carry out. If you're going to have an event, you're responsible for that material, and you have to do it right. And it can't just be thrown away. So if you're generating recyclables, if you're generating organic waste at your events, you got to make sure they comply with 148. Lisa? Thank you. We've been researching a number of them. This includes annual disposal waste per week. It's got some calculators. If you serve 2,000 meals in 1 week, then you can figure out what the amount of waste should be generated. If you don't have a current measurement, if you don't have a scale ticket or some way of measuring the weight of the material you're generating, this is just one example of the calculators we're doing. If you fill one trash dumpster at 6 cubic yards, a 6-yard dumpster, 3 times a week, then you can figure out how much is involved there. And then from that volume, from that weight, you can figure out what the composition was based on a normal pie chart that we had. You can know what's in there and what you should be taking out. And that's the kind of tracking and data that's probably about 3 years away in terms of state reporting, but it's coming. Trevor, would you like to come up and just walk us through, if you would? I'm going to put you on mic and let you talk about the process at your facility. You're very lucky here in Bennington because not most districts have this kind of facility right located in their district. And I told Trevor I kind of surprised him this morning, but I'd like to put him on the spot. Just walk through how that works. Thank you.
You're welcome. So I have no formal presentation, but this is a slide from our composting facility. That truck is actually a Hannaford's in Rutland. Obviously fall time with the pumpkins. So our process is we're a commercial compost facility. We take all meat, bones, fish, plants and animals. If it ever was one, we can take it. Very different than home composting where you have to keep the meat and fish and bones and stuff out due to animal issues. So just to back up for a second though, because some of the comments that were made about composting and its benefit, it's easy to get down in the weeds and say this is all this new law and this is horrible and there's no money. But at the end of the day, I can tell you some really positive facts. I can tell you that we have probably 3 people working in Bennington at a compost facility that we didn't have when we were throwing it away to the landfill. I can tell you that when we started the composting facility, because of the methane versus CO2 production, we looked at what it would take. I'm a numbers person, and I said, we burn about 3,000 gallons of diesel every week to run our trucks. We have 32 trucks on the road. So we said, how many 5-gallon buckets would it take of compost to do it? And I'm proud to say that we're composting enough now to offset all of our diesel emissions from our trucks because of the methane savings from sending it to a landfill. So it's tangible. It's not nearly as sexy as a Prius or a solar panel on your house, but it's tangible things that people can do in their restaurant, in their store, to have a big impact. And I mean, the savings of 150,000 or so gallons of fuel is very tangible. So there are benefits. It's rooted in good. So we compost about between 12 and 1,500 tons of food waste every year at our facility. We create a certified for organic use compost. Another tangible result, the Manchester ball fields that are being put in right now have our compost underneath them. So it tested high enough that they were able to use 90% sand and 10% our compost as the base layer for the sod to be put on. So it's food waste from restaurants and the hospital and the vet's home that's now being used up there.
And so when you talk about offsetting a carbon footprint, that was material that was sourced locally to be used locally, so the footprint is even better.
Yeah, it used to travel from Bennington County to Shaftesbury to a transfer station, put in a tractor trailer and driven not to Coventry but to Clinton County, New York, which is up in the Adirondacks, go way up there, take a left and out in the middle of nowhere. So 3 hours, 3.5 hours away. Now it goes from Bennington County to Bennington, and there's people working and creating soil that then gets used in Manchester, then get used at Homestead Landscaping or H.N. Williams or a lot of these other places being put back into gardens. So it's really neat in the idea of closing the loop. And that's what was so attractive to us as a company. Yes?
Now, are you anaerobic digesting it, or are you just piling it?
We're a windrow. We just started aerated static piles, which to those that don't know that term, it's pipes underneath the pile that blow air into it so we don't have to turn as often. But it's a mixing of manures, utilizing of local manure waste, which is also
So
kind of
basically like you would do at home.
not what you do at home. Our ratios are mixed perfectly. Here's a windrow, here's food waste on top of a bed of wood chips that then gets blended with horse manure and leaf and yard waste. Here is here is our first trial with, and this is kind of interesting. This product is your money. So we have the contract now to compost money residuals from Crane Company in Massachusetts that creates all of our currency. So that's short. That's actually money. That's short cotton fiber from Crane Company. When they create our currency, that's what falls through the screens. And they also, when bills go bad and you turn them into the bank and they send them back, it's called broke. And this has also got a percentage of broke in it. So this is short cotton fiber that we're composting with food waste to make a topsoil product. And these are the air tubes that are going in, and they create the oxygen, or give it the oxygen to meet. A state certified facility is very different from a home composter because we have a lot of regulations. We have to meet temperature. We have to be up to 131 degrees and under 164. We achieve that within 24 hours. And home composting, I'm pretty good at running a compost facility, but I can't get my home compost to work. I call it a food destroyer. It makes like a slimy mess in the bottom, and I'm embarrassed to tell you that. But we're up to 131 degrees within 24 hours. And it's the ratios that are mixed correctly. It's the air and all the carbon to nitrogen that makes it work. This is finished compost coming off. It's, like I say, we create about 1,800 yards a year. We have not found a market for all of it, but we're selling about 1,000 yards a year right now, which is great. And exciting projects like the ball field are really neat. So volume in regards to this law is kind of interesting. We read the DSM study, we got excited about it, we cited a compost facility, we put a bunch of money into it, and we saw food waste spike, and then we saw food waste drop. And we said, where's all the food waste? And obviously we were frustrated with the level of enforcement that A&R wants to do with the generators of this, because there's a lot of chain stores out there that just simply say, well, the fine's not big enough, we're not going to do it. And that's very frustrating as a business owner that's counting on that. But an interesting collateral benefit is that the food waste recovery numbers that you've talked about, 30% food waste. Price Choppers, 18 carts the first week we started, July 1st last year. 18 carts of food waste, twice a week pickup. They realized, oh shoot, look at all this food waste. So they stopped ordering as much. They started freezing it the night before, and they started sending it to the food bank. 18 carts turned into 4 carts. So huge human benefit, huge environmental benefit. Selfishly, we are out looking for other food waste. hence the reason why we took on the crane paper job, to try to keep the facility economical. But yeah, the food waste spiked and then it went down, and we're excited to see some more people come on, the half a ton this year, and then a 1/3 ton next year, which will be most every restaurant.
Yeah.
Most restaurants are half a ton right now. Yeah. Thank you.
In terms of the organics, it's going to take a while, obviously, because not everybody understands, oh, wait a minute, I generate more food waste than I thought because I've never measured it. So how can I know if I'm in the 52 or the 26 or the 18 until somebody comes and says, well, let's just check and see where you are and see what you need to do. Hopefully, we're going to end up, and I did not script this with Trevor. I had no idea what he's going to say. He had no idea his picture was going to be in the slides. But it's important. I think the real benefit, like he says, you've got now 3 people working. You've cut out the long haul that was taking it to New York. You're reusing it in the local area. That's a huge success story. And as more and more people come online, because they're going to have to, not necessarily because they want to, but there'll be more and more collaboration like that. Hopefully, that's going to make that facility even more profitable, certainly for them, but be a profitable piece of infrastructure. When we talk about transfer facilities in towns, right now is a big push in parts of New England to just get the cost down as much as you can. They don't realize that the transfer facilities are an integral part of every community. You need to have some place to take your waste. And you want that place to be safe. You want it to be doing it right. So, A&R's happy with the inspections that they have, that kind of thing. But it's important. It's as important as schools and town offices and fire safety services building. It's just like a water treatment plant. You need that kind of facility. So if it can help bring facilities online like Trevor's, we think it's going to be a win-win for the state, and long term it'll probably be more and more of those nationwide. That's certainly the goal. We looked at events in venues before. This again is the same calculator, and it goes to lodging and hotels. So if you have so many guests or so many rooms, you can calculate what your waste should be. You can calculate what your cost should be per ton or per pound or per guest or however you want to do it. And it can be a way that you can measure competing programs. You may have one hauler that only does your organics. Some haulers will just do that. You don't have to necessarily have both in order to get that program running. Next one. Page 2, again, if you have 286 guests, 1 pound per guest per day, 286 guests, 286 pounds per day, times 7 days a week, 2,000 pounds, 1 ton of organic waste per week. That tells you where you fall in 52 tons per year. If it's organic waste, then you're going to be in violation of the 148. This kind of math is what we're doing is we're developing a calculator that takes the data from this once we check it, the data from NUMOA, the calculator that A&R is using. We're putting all 3 together, and then we're trialing them in the field with pilot programs to make sure that the math works. We're actually going to do some testing to see, okay, which one of these is really the most accurate, and use that as we go forward. Supermarkets and grocery stores, same type of thing, depending on the number of employees, depending upon the disposal of waste per week, you can do the calculations there. I think everybody can take a break. We're going to start again at 11 o'clock for the operator training.